Welcome to the Full-Time FBA Show. In each episode, it's our goal to help you turn part-time hours into a full-time income selling almost anything on Amazon. And now, your hosts of the show, Stephen and Rebecca Smotherman.
Hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Full-Time FBA Show. We're on episode 277, and guess what? We are kicking off Wholesale Month here at Full-Time FBA.
Wholesale Month!
Woohoo! So today's topic is going to be what to do first in wholesale sourcing. Getting started with wholesale sourcing. We're going to be covering that today on the Full-Time FBA Show. Here with me is my co-host, Stephen. Welcome to the show, Stephen, and welcome to Wholesale Month.
I'm excited. I love selling wholesale items. I love finding wholesale items to sell on Amazon, and I love teaching others how to do the same thing.
All right, so let's get into it. We're so glad you joined us for this episode. And before we get into today's topic, I want to make sure you're in the loop for any upcoming news we have, any events, trainings, free goodies that we have available, any coupon codes that we send out. And you can do that by making sure you're subscribed to our newsletter. You can go to fulltimefba.com/subscribe to make sure you're signed up. We just don't want you to miss out. So after you've done that, let's get into today's topic.
So like Rebecca said at the top of the show, today we're getting into a series of episodes related all about wholesale sourcing. And throughout this month, we're going to be talking about different aspects of wholesale model of sourcing, why you should consider it, when you should consider it, which strategies are best for 2025. Basically, all things wholesale for the current FBA seller. So to start off this month, we're going to cover some of the basics because succeeding at wholesale sourcing has a lot to do with doing things in the right order. Because succeeding at wholesale sourcing has a lot to do with doing those things in the right order and making sure you have the foundation that's nice and solid before you start to build up a sturdy structure. You need a solid foundation or you'll be building a house or a building that just won't stand.
We know a lot of people get going in Amazon and start to think about expanding into wholesale, and it can be overwhelming. It's a different process of buying than when you're getting inventory from a second chance shop or a retail store. There are a few extra legal components that are involved in dealing with wholesale inventory, and oftentimes you're working with greater quantities of inventory or higher dollar amounts of purchases. So you want to make sure you're doing everything the right way from the very beginning.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be so overwhelming that you get stuck and you don't know where to begin. And that's what we're going to cover for the rest of this episode. What do you do first when you're starting to sell wholesale items on Amazon? The absolute first thing that you want to make sure that you do is guarantee that you have a solid understanding of the basics of selling via FBA. Wholesale sourcing doesn't have to be super complicated, but getting accounts and going through salespeople to get your inventory is just adding another layer to the process of selling online. So it's good to master the basic elements of selling via FBA before you try to add that component.
Now, if you come from a background where you're already selling on another platform or you have experience with dealing with vendors to get inventory for a brick and mortar store, you'll have a shorter learning curve when it comes to working with wholesale brands or distributors. But in general, we recommend giving yourself some time to build that solid foundation of beginner Amazon knowledge before jumping into wholesale. If you're just starting your Amazon selling account or you've already started it, but you feel shaky about your beginner status, we have the Jumpstart Amazon course just for you. It's a video-driven course that's designed to get your FBA business up and running so that you can then add wholesale sourcing as your next step. You can find the course at fulltimefba.com/jumpstart, and we'll have all the links that we mentioned for you in this episode's show notes.
All right, so the next thing you want to do in your first steps for adding wholesale to your Amazon business is this. Make sure you have the correct expectations for what selling wholesale inventory will be like on Amazon. Adjust your expectations if you need to. Many times, sellers think that selling wholesale inventory is their ticket to easy money on Amazon. Just get an account with a brand, start buying tons of stuff, and the profits are going to start rolling. But what you need to understand is that it's a lot less glamorous than just deciding, I want to get wholesale prices for brand XYZ, and then give them your credit card and you're good to buy inventory. You still have a lot of work to do to find brands with fast-selling, high-quality inventory on Amazon. You have to do the research to find those brands, to find the items within their catalogs, and to open up accounts and finally make your purchases. It's a detailed process and it takes time and work. It's not a get rich quick or get rich easy, but it can be a get rich slow and steady if you have the right expectations.
Another expectation we want to make sure you have set correctly is that you're likely going to be working with smaller brands on Amazon and not the big ones that sound glamorous or sexy to work with. Even if you're ungated to sell a big name brand on Amazon, you're probably not a big enough seller to get a wholesale account with them. Mm-hmm. Many sellers come in thinking they're going to start selling Nike or Lego wholesale or some other brand like that, and those brands are not going to give us the time of day. And you know what? That's okay. We're running small businesses here and we can work with small brands. Small doesn't have to mean not a lot of profit, though.
Right.
Smaller brands are often more than willing to talk with you if you make contact the correct way. And there are riches in the niches. You can still make a ton of money selling inventory from brands that have high quality inventory that sells really well on Amazon, even if they're not a household name outside of special circumstances. So make sure you have correct expectations of what it will be like to source for wholesale inventory, and you'll bypass a lot of disappointment and temptation to just give up.
Okay, so now let's get into some truly practical items to check off your to-do list. You want to know what the concrete steps to take are, right? So here we go. You ready to take some notes? You're going to need to get certain business credentials set up before you start contacting brands to open accounts. Most brands are going to be a lot more likely to interact with you if you are an official business entity, not a side hustle sole proprietor. You need a business name. You need to decide if you want to become an LLC or some type of corporation. Those are things that you'll want to discuss with a tax professional or attorney in your state to make sure that you have things set up correctly. You also need a business email, which means getting a website domain that lines up with your business name. And brands will take you more seriously if you have your own domain rather than a Gmail account. I mean, you could set up your email through your Google account so that it goes through your Gmail, but you want an email address to be something like Steven@stevensbusiness.com rather than Steven@gmail.com. And just note, neither one of those will get to me.
Yeah. I don't know where those would go. So this is the part where I think a lot of people get bogged down. You need a business name, business email. You need a business bank account so that you keep your business and personal finances separate. And it makes bookkeeping and accounting a lot easier and straightforward and potentially more legal for tax purposes. And it's just a lot to get set up in the beginning, but you can take notes, make a checklist, and then just get these things done. You'll also want to apply for a reseller certificate in your state of residence. And this reseller certificate, it might be called by different names depending where you live, which state you live in the US. So you'll just need to Google your state name and then Google, like, for instance, we live in Texas. So Google Texas reseller certificate or Idaho sales tax certificate or Colorado sales and use tax permit or something along those lines. I don't know. I just made up those states in those words, but those are words that you could, I think any type of reseller certificate with your state is going to get you where you need to go in your state government and their application process so that you can find how to apply for that and get started with it.
Yeah. Bottom line is one of the first things you need to do to get started in wholesale is set your business up the correct way. And we have resources that are coming your way to help get you started with that. So don't panic. Don't get overwhelmed if you're hearing all these things and you're like, I don't know if I could do all that. It's doable. We can help. And we can't wait to help you through this process.
And that brings us to the final thing we want to tell you about that you should do first before you start trying to do wholesale sourcing. And that's find out what is working and what's not in 2025 when it comes to selling via wholesale sourcing on Amazon. You want to make sure you're using the most up-to-date resources for learning the strategy. First, you want to educate yourself on all of Amazon's selling policies currently and as they are right now. So if you haven't already or if you haven't recently, make sure you 100% understand Amazon's selling guidelines. We have a quick link for you at fulltimefba.com/guidelines that will take you to directly to Amazon. And then you'll want to find out from wholesale sourcing experts what is working in 2025. What are brands looking for when it comes to partnerships with Amazon sellers? What do they need as far as support on the Amazon platform? How are they interacting with sellers right now?
Yeah, like we said at the top of the show, we've made this month Wholesale Month at the Full-Time FBA Show, and we've got several more episodes coming your way on this topic. We're also gearing up for our next free workshop, and the topic of that workshop is all about getting started with wholesale sourcing on Amazon. So we'll be announcing the dates of the workshop soon, but make sure you're signed up to be notified as soon as those dates and registration are open. So you can sign up at fulltimefba.com/wholesale workshop. And when registration opens up, we will email you the registration link and information as soon as it's open. Or if you're listening to this episode a week or two after it drops, that link might actually take you directly to the wholesale registration. Again, fulltimefba.com/wholesale workshop.
And if you're listening a few months or even years after this episode drops, that link should still take you to the waitlist for the most current wholesale workshop that we have available. So be sure you get signed up today so you can stay up to date on what is the best way to open wholesale accounts and sell wholesale inventory on Amazon. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Full-Time FBA Show. As a reminder, you can find the show notes for this episode along with all of the links we mentioned at fulltimefba.com/277 because this is episode number 277.
And next week on the show, we're going to be talking about what we wish we knew before we started wholesale sourcing and selling on Amazon. We're going to talk about that next week, and it's going to be a good conversation, and we can't wait to see you there.
That's all for this episode of the Full-Time FBA Show. So head over to fulltimefba.com/podcast, where you'll find the show notes and links from this episode. While you're there, subscribe to our newsletter where you'll get several free downloads of our popular and helpful Amazon FBA resources. Now, take action on what you've learned today so you can find success at turning part-time hours into a full-time income with Amazon FBA.